Hello music lovers, my name is Justin Hsieh, CEO and co-founder of Tokn Music, and today we're going to be talking about branding as an artist, building a brand, the components that go inside of it, and how we're going to be targeting this towards your audience and your fans. The first thing that I want to note is not to overcomplicate this, but you should understand the components that go within it. This should come naturally to you. You are an artist, you're not a company, you don't have to create a logo and have all of these fictional components that come from the outside. You're going to make your brand you. It is the easiest way to go, but you should still understand all of the general guidelines behind your brand. One other thing to note is that this is going to be constantly adapting. You are an artist, so you as a person are going to be constantly adapting, so is your brand. And this helps keep your audience and your fans with you. And it makes sure that you are growing over time as well. It's a brand is bigger than just the front facing visuals of it. And that's also what we're going to be talking about right now. What goes into a brand? The two components I would say generally are the visual components and the substance components. The visual, I would just boil that down to the design, the covers, LUTs, Instagram posts. A lot of different components go into the design along with the fashion. So how do you present yourself to your fans? What do you show? And how does that come across to them? The final component to this is the substance. And this is where the meatier components come in. How are your fans connecting with you? How are they seeing you, not just visually, but as a person? Because being an artist now, it is very easy to put your music out there and show that front facing, but it is a lot harder to make those meaningful connections if you don't have the substance, like the substance that goes behind it. For example, the tone, the vibe that you present. And when building your brand, it always starts with the substance. Think of it as inviting people to a house party, right? If there's nothing inside of that house, no one's going to come. Nobody's going to come to that house party. You need to sell it. You need to sell yourself to people, and you need to make sure that they stay. And that also comes with adapting over time. So the first thing that we're going to be chatting about is your brand means nothing without your music. So the backbone to everything is your music. So if you feel like you're not ready to release your music, or you haven't even released your music on SoundCloud, or you haven't released it on Spotify, or you've only dropped a couple songs, this isn't the right time for you. Building a brand is the next step on how to connect with your fan base. We're going to be building your brand around the most authentic version of yourself. Some people want to build a persona, but that's too difficult. And especially for most artists starting off, there's way too many components that go into a brand. It just complicates from the music, and it's going to be difficult to adapt. It's going to be difficult to take it to the next level as you as an artist grow over time as well. So just starting off, who are you? What parts do you show and what parts are unnecessary? Your goal is going to be to condense yourself. Branding is marketing, and marketing today is difficult. You need to find what makes you unique. You need to find the pitch points that are going to sell to your fans, to your audience, or to your potential audience, and create your own persona. One thing that I want to just dive into a little bit, we are all a persona. Like everything that we do is a persona. If we had no outside environment, if we were never talking to anyone, if we were just our own little bubble, our persona would be completely different than as it is now. And some people talk differently than from when they're with their family, to with their friends, to at their business, because this is how we need to present ourselves to make ourselves the most attractive to the audience that we are going after. Right? Just the philosophy of individual persona is important going after this, because you are going to be your most authentic self in a sense, but it's going to be different as you move and as you adapt over time. So now we're going to go into building the substance of your brand. And there's two questions that I want to present to you. Who are you right now? And who do you want to become? And your goal as a brand is going to be to become your future self. And it's still important to have that understanding of where you are right now. You don't want to be shy to show who you are right now and what you're doing, whether that's, I'm working a 9 to 5, or I'm doing this. But in the end, your brand and your voice and your vision should be your future self, who you want to become. And this means that you're not staying stagnant, because staying stagnant is what kills a brand, especially as an artist. And dealing with negativity is an important aspect of your brand as well. There is no necessary right or wrong to how you're going to be targeting your brand. Maybe going full negative and full sad boy, sad girl might be the best way to go. What works. But I would recommend you don't build your brand on negativity. One, for your own happiness, and two, because you want to be building your brand for your future self so that you do not stay stagnant. And if your future self, if you want to stay sad and that's what you want to be, that might not be the best way moving forward. And again, as we talked about, it's not about forgetting the now. It's not about like saying, oh, I am my future self. You can still have snapshots of negativity into your life, giving your fans and your audience the deepest insight of who you are and connecting on a very emotional level. But once it's overutilized, a lot of people get washed out. And if you build your entire brand on negativity, a lot of those people grow up, right? And if whether it's a breakup or just you've had a sad life, or it happens. Many people's lives have a lot of negative aspects to it, but you don't want to burn yourself out with it and then burn your audience out with it. The next thing that I want to chat about with your brand, and a very important aspect, is self-reflection. If you're building your brand on yourself, you want to know who you are because you're going to be constantly evolving. What do you want to do in your life? What is missing? Are you truly happy? What will make you truly happy? Dig deep into who you are. Dig deep into those questions and figure out who you are because you want yourself to be your brand. Right. And if you don't have that understanding, it is going to be difficult moving forward. In the end, substance builds the understanding of what you're putting out into the world. And the visual components just tie it all down and put a nice bow and wrapping around it and presents it to your fans. So all of these components are important. And it doesn't necessarily matter how people perceive it or how you perceive it at the start, because this is something that you are building, right? We talked about this in the last video, but you don't want to be afraid of being corny, being afraid of putting yourself out there in a certain way that might be vulnerable or that you might view as like stupid or corny or whatever, right? That doesn't matter right now. It's just about you building something that is going to definitely adapt over time. So I would just stop overthinking it and just start putting content out there, right? It's going to change, it's going to grow, and it's not just a business, it is you. The final thing we're going to talk about is the strategy. So how are we going to get this neatly wrapped substance and visual out to your fans? The first obvious answer is content releases. Instagram, TikTok, all other social media platforms, building a connection with your fans. Your brand isn't what is on top. Your brand isn't what is in the middle. Your brand is everything outside of that. That's just the core of it, and that's what you have control over. But everything else comes from your fans. It comes from everybody outside of that little box that you've built, and people are just swarming around that. And you want to make it as attractive for people to swarm, but you also want to make sure that you're putting yourself out there on the right media outlets to do that. And that's why I'm saying put content out, because that's really is the most important part. If you don't take anything away from this, it would just be to start doing it. Start putting yourself out there, start being vulnerable, start being corny, start doing whatever you can to build that outside connection. Even if there isn't anything outside the box, even if there isn't anything inside the box, that might come over time. And there's things that you can remember that we just talked about on how you can make that box as strong and visually appealing as possible. But in the end, it's just you putting yourself out there in a sense that builds connections and that builds fans. The next thing would be keeping a consistent schedule. So this is very, very important. A lot of artists have a release and have a campaign coming up, and then they really market hard for their music, and then they get a couple fans from TikTok or from Instagram, and then they fall off the face of the planet, and then they come back up and they start building connection with their fans, and they fall off the place of the fit. You don't want to do that. Have a Google Calendar, start self-improvement, start figuring out how to keep yourself organized, how to put your content out there, how to organize it, how to release it, and make yourself a business, because in the end, that is what you are. Your artist brand is a business. So you need to keep consistent with it, or else the fans that you've built are going to be lost over time. The big artists, the big mainstream artists aren't just there for their releases and they're all 100% in, and then when they're not releasing, they back out. Usually they keep themselves relevant. That's because that's the whole point of building a brand. They still do Instagram lives, they still connect with their fans, they still put out content, and that's going to be important for you to do as well. Momentum is always going to start slow when you do this stuff, when you start posting, when you start this process. But don't be discouraged. Like, it is going to happen. It's going to start slow, but then it is going to pick up. You need to trust the process, and maybe it'll take a couple weeks, maybe it'll take a couple years, right? But this is something that starts from somewhere, and it's something that you shouldn't be discouraged on. It's something that will grow over time. Finally, in the visual components, I personally specialized in graphic design and video production and product design. I'm able to utilize that with everything that I do. But if you're an artist and you don't, it really is all up to you how you do that. You can learn yourself. You can start learning Adobe products. You can start doing YouTube tutorials and videos on how you can build this visual brand and these visual components and these visual assets, or you can put it to someone else. If you have another artist or a friend that also handles this, have their help or get their help, or just start having crappy visual assets. It doesn't, like, the visual, again, is the bow on top. It's important, but everything that comes inside of it is much more important. It has more substance in it. It's what draws people in more. And yeah, I mean, like, that deserves a separate video all into itself, the visual components. But in the end, just start building your brand, start creating fan connection, and do whatever you can to really put yourself out there and start making you as successful as possible. And that's about it for this episode, but make sure to keep updated with everything going on. Follow us on our social medias. Everything will be linked down below. Also, check out our website if you want to learn more about Tokn Music. We just opened up the doors for artists to join our platform. So if you're an artist, a manager, and you feel like you deserve more revenue, feel free to reach out to us. I'd love to have a conversation. Same with if you're a fan or if you're just somebody wanting to contribute to this ecosystem. Feel free to reach out. All of the resources and the links are going to be linked in the description. Just have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon.